Dan, Andrew, Sam, welcome to the Game Informer Show, guys.
Happy to be here.
Oh my gosh, it's an honor to have everybody. It's always confusing with the Dev Roundtable, especially for audio listeners. Andrew, senior producer for Skate City from Snowman, the studio behind Alto's Adventure. Hello, sir.
Hey, good to see you.
That is Andrew's voice. Everybody remember that one. Okay, Dan from Cappy with Grindstone. Hello, sir.
How's it going?
Real good, real good. And Sam, the founder of Game Band, the creator of Where Cards Fall. Welcome.
Thank you.
So you all develop games for the Apple Arcade. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you feel like there's a certain amount of camaraderie between developers? Have you guys communicated much amongst each other and other developers, or you just want to talk about kind of this culture and scene?
Guys, this is the first time I'm meeting them, so I would say no.
Yeah, that's an easy answer. I don't think we've spoken yet, Dan, but I think there's definitely a sense of camaraderie within game developers, and especially within Arcade. Especially even with Toronto, like we meet up with Nathan all the time from Cappy, and like we go to dinner and hang out and stuff. So that's really cool. It's always good to have people within your industry that you can sort of talk to that can relate to the experiences that you're going through, and you can kind of get tips from, especially in the case of being like less or more experienced, because the types of people in this industry come from such a wide variety of backgrounds. So that's really cool, just to kind of draw on each other's experiences and talk things through and get inspiration really from each other.
Yeah. So
like Andrew said, Toronto is actually like a really tight scene. There's a lot of developers here, and everyone seems to know everyone. But for launching on Arcade, we were sort of heads down working on stuff, and I didn't even know what other games were coming. That was a huge question mark. Like, okay, I know we're on there. What else? And then like the day it launches, we're like, oh, cool, they're on there, and oh, look at that. And then actually yesterday I was walking down the street and like saw a guy I hadn't seen in 6 years, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, we just put something on Arcade. He's like, I got something coming on Arcade. I was like, whoa.
Is Toronto a big mobile town in general?
I think it's just a big everything game dev scene, especially indie, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know there's like the big Ubisoft studio and stuff. What other big studios going on up there?
Oh yeah, there's also Ubisoft. How did I forget them?
That little studio and stuff.
For the first time a couple months ago was really cool.
What's that?
Oh, we went to the Ubisoft studio for the first time just a couple months ago. So it's really cool to just kind of be introduced to all the other game studios. There's always someone you're meeting for the first time. There's a lot of game meetups in Toronto and a lot of game development schools, which is really great. Like the industry really provides a lot of cool avenues for people that are coming into the industry to grab footholds and get that first position. You always have a lot of different options to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure. Sam, and you're just out on an island out there in LA?
Yeah, you know, it's funny, like even though I'm separate, I'm not in Toronto, me and Andrew have been hanging out for years now, because Where Cards Fall is a collaboration between my studio, the Game Band, and Snowman. So those guys out in Toronto. Andrew's been working on Skate City, but you know, throughout the whole process, like we've become really, really close friends.
Nice. And Sam, what have you worked on in the past?
So before Where Cards Fall, I was at a studio called Giant Sparrow, and they made What Remains of Edith Finch. And then before that, I was at Toys for Bob working on Skylanders. That's
an amazing pedigree. What Remains of Edith Finch? Was that game as challenging on a technical level as it seemed?
Yeah, it was a really, really tricky game to design, because it kind of felt like, you were working on a whole bunch of games at once. Typically when you're developing like a series of mechanics and interactions, you've got your like kind of core set that you're polishing over the course of development. But for Finch, it was like 8 or 9 little games that all needed to kind of be built from the ground up. So it's really, really tricky. And then if one of them wasn't working, like it kind of brings down the whole. So it was a long process, but really rewarding.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. All right, Dan in particular with Cappy, I'm curious about your history with Apple and how you got approached about Apple Arcade and how much you knew, because it certainly feels like Grindstone could have been a game that was developed for a completely different ecosystem here.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been hearing a lot of that, or like seeing that on Twitter. Yeah, we actually have a long history with Apple. We released Critter Crunch for Apple, like one of the first iterations of iPhone. I don't even remember what year that was. It's so long ago. And then we made kind of a big splash with Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery EP, which was like 2011. And that was a really cool time in mobile, because it felt like all these other really creative games were flooding into the App Store, and it just felt like a really kind of golden time to try new, strange, kind of arty ideas. And we always meant to keep that going. It's just the way life goes. You get other projects, other opportunities, and so we kind of just went into the console space for a while. And then Grindstone was this pet project that was always bubbling in the background of the studio. And it was always intended to go to iPhone, to go to mobile. And then finally we're like, how long has it been since we made a mobile game? Holy, that's a long time. And it's like, let's finish this thing. And then as we were making it, this whole Apple Arcade thing came to our knowledge, and we're like, I think we want to be on that. That sounds cool. And luckily we had a Nathan who knows people and got in the right rooms, and we made it on.
How much has that changed the design discussions about just, okay, we don't have to try and push people towards microtransactions? Does it have like a lot of tendrils diving deep into design there?
Yeah, it didn't change much. That's the funny thing. There's a lot of talk on Twitter and forums like, oh, I bet this was totally built for microtransactions and ads and stuff. And to be totally honest, we knew that was, before we knew about arcade, the reality of making a game for that space is like, okay, we should probably, to get it in the most amount of hands and to get the most exposure, we should probably go ad supported or free to play. And something we had no experience with, so we were kind of uncomfortable with it. We kind of pushed that off and just kept working on the core of the game. And then we had ideas, and we had just started to sort of storyboard, okay, here's our approach to ads. We definitely didn't want the ads to be intrusive. We didn't want ads just like, oh, I finished a level, suddenly an ad comes up. We were not into that at all. We wanted it to be entirely an opt-in ad system that was in the voice of the game. So like a guy that gives you ads and it's skinned as like a character moment. It's actually the Mystic who's in the game now who gives you the bonus levels. He was our ad guy. It was like you would path into him and he would create this portal and go like, I'm going to show you this mysterious other dimension. And you'd stick your head in and then an ad would play. And we were just starting to build that when the arcade thing happened. And we were like, okay, we don't have to do any of that stuff. Wicked. And so it was just like, we just cut all the plans to do any of that, but it didn't change the design of the game really at all. Everything that you see in the game, in the arcade version, we had built because that's what we wanted the game to play like. It was really just the ad stuff that were like, we don't have to do that, you know.
It's crazy to think about like the evolution of the Apple marketplace. You talk about the sword and sorcery era where it was more premium, a little bit more creative, artsy. You could say, hey, this is going to cost $5, and people are like, yeah, I'm okay with that. It seems like Snowman in particular with Alto, you guys have really kept that rolling in a way few other studios have. How have you done that?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question we ask ourselves every time we start thinking about a game. And we're always like, mobile is always front and center and place of mind for us when we're thinking about a new project. It's just what we've been successful at and how we sort of got our start. So it's what we know and what we practice, so we're comfortable there. And I think with Alto, there's always like a little bit of luck. Like we don't want to say that we're, everything that we did was just pitch perfect and perfect timing. But I think there is an appetite for those types of games where players want end-to-end experience, where they can fully immerse themselves in the world and they don't have to worry about being taken out of that with ads and paywalls and sort of looming monetization loops that are sort of hanging over that experience. And I think those are the kind of games that we gravitate to as players as well. Like we try to make games that we would enjoy playing as well. Alto is definitely one of those. So is Skate City. So is Where Cards Fall. Anytime we consider a new idea, we first and foremost just want to play it ourselves. And those just happen to be the experiences that we enjoy. So we've never really considered stepping into the free-to-play market. So I think when Apple Arcade came around, it was like an amazing arena to be able to step into, not only because it allows developers to sort of push the boundaries of what mobile gaming can be, but also for players that want that experience where they get games in other places that are those end-to-end, fully encompassed games. And I think, that's sort of just what we've always shot for. And I think that's what made Alto special. And a lot of players reach out to us, a lot of really cool connection there. And that's what we want to bring to our games.
It's wild to think. I mean, I would, reason to guess that every developer says, oh, we make games that we want to play. A majority of developers at least. But still, like, is it the level of support from Apple that led to Alto's success, or is it word of mouth, or what? How do you think you guys were able to thrive in that environment when it seems like so many other developers just sank?
I think on one hand, it's like being there at the right time. like Dan was saying, there was sort of that golden age of game development on the App Store when everything was new and there weren't these established sort of grooves in the hill that like free to play really sort of entrenched. Whereas I think a lot of the conversation between gamers and sort of in the zeitgeist now is that when you think of a mobile game, you think of free to play because the market's sort of spoken and that's what's the most accessible. So that's what you might come to expect. So as a player, I'm excited that there's this new sort of reinvigorated conversation around premium games in Apple Arcade.
Yeah.
With Alto specifically, I think it was a matter of timing and, you know, I have to tip my hat to Harry Nesbitt, the artist. Like he really captured a sense of place and a sense of feeling that that snowboarding in general gives you. And that's always what we want to bring to each experience, sort of like the essence of what we're trying to give a player and trying to recreate on your phone.
Yeah. So Sam, at a certain point, Andrew just told you like, hey, there's this Apple Arcade thing and it seems perfect for this game you're developing. Or what was your journey towards Apple Arcade like?
You know, it's funny, we were already designing where cards fall for Apple's platforms. The reason for that is, you know, as a studio, we're really interested in finding ways to just broaden the audience for games. So where cards fall is a game that's like a very deep, rich puzzle game. So we expected that people that already love puzzle games and narrative games would really enjoy it. But because the interactions were designed to be so simple and could be like understandable, you know, for anybody that's used an iPhone before, we were like, okay, well, maybe there's a real opportunity here to bring some people into the fold that aren't already playing games. So that's what we were focusing on touch devices. So when we found out about Apple Arcade, we're just like, okay, this is the perfect fit for this game because this game is like way more. It's bigger, it's more substantial than the types of stuff we typically see on mobile. It's the type of thing that we'd probably want to charge like $20 or more for on a more traditional game platform. But there's just no way, there was never really any way of doing that on mobile and really, you know, giving the game the value that it deserved. So when Apple Arcade came around, we're like, okay, like here's a place where the game can be, you know, dignified and like respected the way that we want it to, and it can reach the audience that we want. And it also allows people that maybe aren't already interested in it to give it a shot. Like you might subscribe to Apple Arcade for Grindstone, which I hope you do. It's an awesome game. And then see our game right next to it and go, hey, like that looks kind of interesting, and check it out too.
Yeah. Okay. So the history with Apple and communication with Apple, what do you think has changed with Apple Arcade? Is it new leadership? Have they changed their communication with the devs that have worked with them in the past? How would you describe Apple and their level of communication in this phase?
So I guess for us, like Snowman had a really wonderful relationship with Apple, and we, you know, we're always like just kind of eager to talk to them. But the, I don't know, it doesn't feel super different for me because like they always kind of had an interest in our game, and we just were able to kind of continue talking with them, and it just kind of became like more of a natural progression and a natural fit. So like they've always just been a pleasure to work with. Yeah.
Dan, how have you noticed the evolution of Apple?
Yeah, I gotta say, I can't see much of a change because Grindstone, like I said, it was always this thing that was in the background of the studio that Apple has known about for a long time, and they were like, we want that, let's do it. And so they have played like every early build all the way through. And so there was a sort of seamlessness between what Grindstone was going to be in the App Store and what it became on the arcade platform. Like there was no kind of like, because it's on arcade, you need to do this or that. It was like they accepted the game for what it was, exactly as it was. And so to me, it was a very seamless transition. I mean, I'm sure for them it was like incredibly hard to launch all like 100 games all at once and a new platform, and like I'm sure they were running around crazy, but for us it was like we asked them a question, we got an answer. It was we dealt with some of the same people we had always dealt with, so yeah, to me it was very seamless.
That's the key. So it's still the same people. It's not like new people kicked down the door and said this is the new way we're doing it and we're gonna go reach out to Cappy now.
Yeah, not that I knew of, no.
Okay. All right, that helps. I'd imagine one of your first questions is how do we get paid for this thing? Yes.
And then we all go quiet.
So you can't reveal too much, right? I'm just curious. I mean, good deal, happy with the deal. It seems like it's going to be a good future for developers out there.
Yeah, I think Arcade really let us make Skate City at least exactly as we intended it to be. They didn't really place any design constraints or ask us to do things differently, which is really cool. They're just really supportive, and it let us make the game that we wanted to make, and we feel great about how we made it and moving forward with the game as well.
Is there a certain ideal scale for games because they're giving you some sort of bulk, financing, and then it's like, okay, we can make this level of thing, or is it flexible based on the scale of the game?
They're super supportive, but that's all I can kind of say about that.
Okay, this was one of their decrees. If you're an Apple Arcade, you can't talk about money.
I mean, I think if you look at the games on Arcade, there's a whole bunch of different scales of game. There's like short, sweet narrative experiences. There's long RPG experiences. I don't think there's this kind of like one size fits all. This is what an arcade game has to be, and we're only gonna fund these kinds of games. I think there's like a huge, diverse collection already, and I think it's just gonna get more and more so.
Yeah. And it's not a matter of you guys getting paid based on minutes played or anything like that. Okay, everyone's looking around. Very
I was like looking for a
interesting.
lawyer behind.
Oh God, that's totally fine. It is crazy to spend a lot of time digging through Apple Arcade and then going back to, standard mobile games. Like, all right, Mario Kart Tour, I'll give that a whirl. Or like Call of Duty Mobile came out this week, I'll try that. And it's just like, oh, that's right. It makes me feel gross to leave my little folder where I have all Apple Arcade stuff. How do you guys see that differentiation? Do you think that Apple Arcade is just going to get bigger and bigger and eventually bigger franchises will move in there?
Really tough to say right now.
It is.
Yeah, it's a really exciting launch lineup. Like Dan was saying, it's really diverse. We're seeing all different types of experiences in there. And I think if you were just to try to like stay in your comfort zone in Apple Arcade, you'd have a really difficult time because there's so many, like every game is so different from the one right next to it. And I hope that part of it at the very least continues. I think that's really exciting. But yeah, I don't know, like right now the lineup feels very, very different from what we're getting on other platforms. You're not seeing like the big AAA shooters. You're not seeing like big MOBAs and everything. It's a different style of games. It's a different breed. And that's very exciting. I think anything that can come in and kind of make its stamp with kind of its own collection, all it can help do is broaden what we've got for the industry and just get more players into the fold and give people experience that they didn't know they'd already love.
Totally. In terms of just like, hey, here's a dump of a ton of new IP. I mean, it's unprecedented in a lot of ways for the industry.
Crazy.
It's just wild.
Yeah.
Dan, what do you think about us on the press side? I think it's been challenging, at least from our perspective, to dig through everything. Are you frustrated by the lack of press or the lack of reviews out there for a lot of this content?
I mean, it's a mixed bag. I can appreciate how hard it must be for you guys to go like, okay, this crazy new thing is just launched, and inside that crazy new thing that deserves coverage on its own, there's 100 other little things, and where do we even start? And I've been really happy with the press we've got so far. I mean, we could always use more. We love the game, and we would love it to be in as many hands as possible. And it's like, the other thing is that it's different than just a regular launch. It's like, we want to reach the people that already have the service, because that's the only people that can play the game. So it's about reaching people that are already receptive to the service in general. To be honest, I had no idea what this was going to be like. I had my head down working on Grindstone, and the entire platform to me was a big question mark. Like, what's going to be on there? How are people going to receive it? Both the press and the consumers. And I mean, I opened it on day one and I was like, whoa, I'm a kid in a candy store. Like, I was super excited. And I thought maybe that was just me. And then I started to look at press, and I was expecting, to be honest, I was expecting a similarly skeptical opinion from the press. Like, well, we'll hold off and see. But I was really pleased to see so many outlets going like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like, this is really cool. I've heard people say it's like one of the strongest like game launches or service or console launches, like of a collection of things. And I think they're right. I think it's like it came out of kind of nowhere. I mean, people knew about it, but I don't think the expectations were as high as they are now for what's going to come forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta say, Andrew, like from my perspective, it's weird just hearing like whispers and murmurings of like, I dug through, I downloaded stuff where it's like, all right, this thumbnail looks cool, this thumbnail looks cool. It's like, I don't know what else to go off of here, right? Because there's not just like a batch of reviews out there. But it's like, it's crazy because it's like, oh yeah, the team behind Alto, they made a game in here. And it's like, where is it? Like, I wish the developers were more up front in the App Store just to see like, oh, it's this pedigree, instead of like, the genre and then this detail, then this detail. It's like, get the devs out there more. Are you frustrated with that a little bit, or do you think people are finding it?
Yeah, I don't think so. I first off, I have to give my hat off to our devs at Agents in Norway. They're the dev studio that we made the game with, and we published with them. So they put in, years and years of work into this game, and it was really showing. And the response we're getting to the game from players and press is like amazing. It's almost overwhelming in its positivity. But I think overwhelming is kind of the word we're using more and more when we think about arcade. Like in the last week, in any bit of spare time I've tried to download a few titles, but like I'll play a game for 10 or 15 minutes and be like, oh, this is awesome. Oh, this is really cool. This is really well considered. But then I feel that tug, that sort of Netflix scroll that you want to dive through and just hop into the next game. So I think right now, at least for a little while, there'll be sort of a new, I don't want to say disposability, but I think the pull to jump around between games is so strong that a lot of players, and probably definitely the press, haven't been able to dive into each game and really see the depth that's available. So I think that will come. It's very different from any other launch where you get, a couple games a week or one game every once in a while, but having everything up front is just going to mean that players have more to discover as time goes on. And we can't wait to see what everyone says as they get deeper and deeper into the games, like Where Cards Fall and Grindstone, all these other great titles in the service.
Yeah. Sam, what's been the biggest surprise for you so far throughout the entire process?
Oh man, well, Where Cards Fall has been sort of in development for the better part of my life, so it's kind of hard to pick just one. I think the biggest surprise is just the fact that we're here, that this game was made and we're here getting this game out on Apple Arcade. When we first decided to work with Snowman 4 years ago, the plan was, okay, we're going to make this little more polished version of the game was originally a student project. So we're going to take the student project and just polish it up a little bit, get it out there in a year. And we're going to do it with 3 people. And that did not happen. We had greater visions for the game, and Snowman was supportive of that, and we took our time, and Apple was excited about it early, and then eventually arcade became a thing, and we decided to jump into that. And throughout the process, we had the opportunity to build this amazing team of people. There are 20 people right now at the Game Band, and they're all it's just such an incredible group. It's the most talented team I've ever had the privilege of working with, and I never expected to be able to do that with our first project, and I never expected the game to turn out the way that it did.
What kind of feedback are you looking for? You guys just on Twitter with quotes around Where Cards Fall, just over and over again, searching YouTube, stuff like that?
Yeah, basically. I'm excited though to see like these guys are talking about months down the line what people say. I think Where Cards Fall is especially the type of game that it really has to kind of sit with you for a little bit. I don't think we're going to get a lot of quick reactions to it. But maybe a couple months from now, maybe a year from now or so, somebody will write us in and say hey, this game meant a lot to me. So that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Yeah. Dan, what have you found that's been the most interesting feedback?
People don't like my level 21. They really don't like it. It's too hard. No, one of the most gratifying things, the team is just overwhelmed with the response to the game. I think because it's something that has been with us for so long, we've sort of taken it for granted. Just oh yeah, it's this thing that's a known quantity to us, and we've just been really gratified by how excited people got by what on the surface looks like a very simple puzzle game, a beautifully rendered puzzle game with tons of character and blood, but a puzzle game. And so that's been really gratifying. One of the things that's really made me excited is the soundtrack, the response to the soundtrack, because I got my little cousin to make it. He's not little, he's 27, but I'm old, so that's little. And yeah, we took a chance on him. I knew he made great stuff, and we were looking for composers, and I was I think my little cousin can do this. And everyone was oh, this is going to get awkward when we have to fire Dan's. He came in and just killed it, and then there's just people on Twitter just going, what is going on with this music? I need it. And that's been super great for him because he's just starting his career, and I think that's been awesome. But in general, the response has just been fabulous. We're sort of, yes, we have, I'm refreshing Twitter and going, seeing what people are saying, and constantly it's kind of an addiction. I need to stop.
Talking about the music is interesting. What do you guys think about the ability to play podcasts or play your own music in your games? Was that part of the Apple Arcade kind of decree, is like, hey, don't make that an option?
No, I think for us it's a bug and we fixed it.
Oh, really?
There's an update coming.
Sam, for you? Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, we're a little more obnoxious about it. We don't let you do it because we really wanted you to be kind of in the world of our game and to be really focusing on the game. Work Hardswell also has a really great soundtrack, and the soundtrack's by a friend of mine named Torin Borodale. I wanted you all to hear his amazing work. And our audio director, Christy, she put so much work and love into the sound effects in the game. So I just thought it'd be a real shame to not be able to hear that.
I get it. Let's see. Andrew, predictions for the future. Where do you think Apple Arcade is going to be at 2 years from now? Do you see it as a sustainable avenue for a lot of smaller indie devs out there?
We're at the wild speculation phase of the podcast.
Complete speculation.
Yeah, we're nothing but like excited here. We are like eternally optimistic about most things. I think that's why we like take risks on making premium titles. And I think Arcade has the potential to really break through to a new audience that maybe doesn't consider themselves gamers or hasn't really played a lot of console games. The fact that anyone can get high quality games that are more bite-sized is really awesome. And I think just that the potential there to make new types of games, break a lot of the molds that what we
hang on, I think a DeLorean is taking off. What in God's name is that? Dan, are you being thrown in a dump truck?
That's not me. I had the siren earlier. There was a siren. That was me.
All right, that'll be the great mystery. I'm sorry, what words of wisdom were you saying, Andrew, before a rocket took off?
That was just the speculation train rolling in. Yeah, it's an awesome new avenue to sort of push what we expect from mobile games, from games on your TV, games on your Mac. And I think it will hopefully encourage more developers to take a lot more risks and try to create new, bold things.
And you think the terms from Apple are sustainable moving forward for devs?
Yeah, I think it puts developers in a really good position.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. Sam, anything else you want to say about your experience, man?
I don't know. I'm just really grateful for the whole thing. I guess since you're asking a little bit about like sustainability and everything, I'll just say that our game wouldn't exist without Apple Arcade. Like, there's just no way. So if you play our game and you enjoy Work Hardswell, like that's I think a pretty good answer to how happy the developers are.
That's interesting. Dan, you're committed to Apple Arcade. You think Cappy's going to keep making games for it?
I certainly hope so. Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited by the platform. And I just wanted to congratulate these guys on their launch as well, because they made 2 beautiful games. And that was the thing, is that I didn't know what it was going to be like. I open up the app and I see our game alongside all these like amazing creative games. And it's like instantly I felt like, wow, we're amongst really great company. And it just felt like we're part of this really cool club. And I just want that to keep expanding and more cool games to get let in.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else from Cappy you want to plug? And Nathan Vela recently left. It's not something worth plugging, but how are things going up there?
Why did you bring that up?
I'm sorry.
No, we desperately miss Nathan already. Last week was his last day. There were lots of tears, but he's going on to something really cool. We're really excited, and we're still going to be working with him and seeing him. But plug, I mean, Sam Webster, that's the composer of the soundtrack. He's going to be putting that up soon, so you can get that. And I just got my brand new, still smells like the factory below vinyl of Jim Guthrie's soundtrack.
Ooh.
I believe it's 3 LPs. It's this huge gatefold. It's like gorgeous. Anyway, that's coming out really soon. So
that was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.